The country's farmers have become so desperate that they've taken to fixing the roads themselves to get their produce to market. Our Agri-SA says that poorly maintained roads are resulting in an increase in input costs, which are unfortunately passed on to us as consumers. I'm Aviwe Mtila, and this is the day that was. Is South Africa on the road to food insecurity? Now that's the big question we pose in today's special focus on how our crumbling road infrastructure is impacting the vital agricultural sector. Our ENCA anchor Gareth Edwards spoke to his co-anchor Cindy Mabe, who was in Limpopo, to get a first-hand experience of the extent of the problem.
It's almost impossible to find a piece of tar on that road behind you, and that road is so important. It's essentially a bloodline for the agricultural sector.
And as you saw earlier on, this is actually a school bus. So when we talk about a farming community, we're not just talking about, farmers producing food that you and I depend on for sustainability, but it's also a community where school children have to travel on these treacherous roads, and it's very dusty, by the way. And as earlier from the Agri Limpopo, Deirdre Carter was saying that this is the best part of the road. I mean, it's quite a long stretch. She says this is the highway. If you and I imagine what highways look like in the rest of the cosmopolitan areas, etc., metropolis, if this is a highway, then it is really a disaster, to say the least. If you go further up, it's even worse so. As you saw earlier on, our cameraman Teddy giving us pictures there, and it's dusty. This is the intersection, by the way, which leads to Messina and Lephalale, which are your very key areas in terms of the distribution of goods and services. There's about 4,000 farm workers just in this space alone who are impacted not only by the dust, which obviously would impact on their health as well. Visibility is poor, early hours of the morning, let alone at night as well. So it is, it gives you a sense when you're really on the ground what is going on. Kobus Kutsia, one of the farmers, was saying they have to invest in just their fleet of vehicles, 20,000 Rand a month, because of the impact of what the road infrastructure then does to their fleet as well.
Our reporters were also on the ground in Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape. In KwaZulu-Natal, persistent flooding has severely damaged key parts of the province's road network, with trucks also causing regular car pile-ups. NCA anchor Tumelo Mthotwane spoke to senior reporter Dasin Tatia for more on this.
What can you tell us from where you stand, just in terms of the damage?
Well, this is just one of the communities, Tumelo. You know that during the KZN floods last year, there were many roads that were damaged. In fact, during that one-year anniversary of those floods, in the eThekwini municipality, the mayor had said that there were about 600 projects that they were busy with, and there was about 5.6 billion Rand in damage. But that's just from the floods. So we need to park that for a second, because the issues are generally bigger than that. That's not including the other problems that arise as a result of a lack of maintenance, and the problems that arise within communities. So obviously, before we look at the broader issue of the province, we also need to narrow it down to certain communities, and that's why we are in Morningside today. Besides the big floods of last year, there were also heavy rains that came in that year and again this year, and it's caused major damage in several areas, one of them being here. In fact, there were some shocking pictures that emerged from this particular road that I'm on just last month, because further down there was a sinkhole that had developed, and a taxi had been almost swallowed by that hole. And the residents here say that it's due to a lack of maintenance and problems with the water pipes.
I think what I can say is that we've been living here for the last 25 years or so, and Earl Hague Road used to be one of the best roads to drive on. We just a few roads away from the King's house. The experience here was really frightening. We had a taxi, and this area that you're looking at here, there was an AA truck that was stuck in this as well. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had a reporter that came out from the Independent, and we highlighted that this was now going on a 2 weeks prior to that it was not being fixed. And it was dangerous. When I walked past here, there was basically like a river of water that was underneath the sinkhole, which is obvious that is what the problem actually was. Further down, if you see all the way down there, there's barricades there. So this is being fixed, but that's being pooling up with water. Yeah. We've made numerous calls. We are on every service group that you can think of. We reach out to the councillor. We understand that he has challenges with this municipality. We've asked on eThekwini pages and the works. Bring out the city manager, bring out the mayor. We need to tackle this holistically.
Potholes, sinkholes, and roads falling apart. And that's some of the issues facing the Gauteng province as it battles to maintain its ailing road infrastructure. In the country's economic hub, the state of the country's roads could increase food prices even further as farmers are forced to spend money on alternative transport arrangements. Our reporter, Mangoba Mkhunu, was out and about looking at the conditions of the roads in certain areas. He also had a chat with Leighton Beard from the Automobile Association for more context.
As you've been speaking to experts and even people in the agriculture sector, what are they telling you about the state of our road infrastructure and how it's affecting business?
Well, Maseko, a lot of motorists are telling us that, it's hard to drive on the streets of Johannesburg. And this is because of the poor road infrastructure, not only the issue of potholes, but roads that are unmaintained, roads that constantly are posing a danger to many of the motorists. I think one of the apps that we went to, which is the Pothole Patrollers, saying, Maseko, that they fixed about 515 potholes this month alone. And this just gives you a picture of how bad the situation is on Johannesburg's roads. We're in the city centre just a short while ago and speaking to motorists there who will tell you that they're quite frustrated at the poor state of the roads in the city centre itself. And this is the country's economic hub, so you'll imagine that there's a lot of economic activity, there's a lot of transportation that takes place in this particular city. So quite a number of frustrations even from the taxi industry, some of them who are telling us that they have to fix tires almost every week because of the issue of potholes. And just behind me here, we're here on Bears Nodia here in Cresta. Just behind us, of course, you can see some of the work being done to try and patch up some of the potholes. This is part of the team from the Pothole Patrol that are here trying to fix one of the potholes. Of course, they respond to an average of about 80 to 120 potholes a day here in Johannesburg alone, and that's just part of the work, just to try and fix those potholes. But joining me now, Maseko, just to discuss this further is Leighton Beard from the Automobile Association. Leighton, thank you very much for your time. Let's start here. You, as the AA, have labelled this year as the year of the pothole. How bad is the situation?
Yeah, I think we need to acknowledge that the situation in terms of potholes, not only in Gauteng but throughout the country, is extremely poor. Roads are engineered by specialists to ensure that there is a free flow of traffic, both motorized traffic and obviously people who walk as well on sidewalks. So it's not just simply a question of laying a piece of tar down on a road. There's a lot of thought that has to go into designing and engineering a road. And yes, it is very expensive. And the reason that we need these roads to be in a good condition, as your previous guest also said, Nkoba, is because it is such a important part of our economy. Trucks use those roads, people use those roads, pedestrians use those roads, and they use them for very specific purposes. They get to and from work, they carry goods, they carry people. So for those roads to be in a bad state of repair means that our economy will suffer, because all of those things I've mentioned are going to struggle to actually get to their destination. And unfortunately, the reports that we've heard and the reports that we get, not only from our members, but from the public as well, is that there is a steady decline in the condition and state of roads throughout the country.
After the break, we look at some of the other big interviews covered by our anchors during the day that was. It's good to have you back on the day that was. I am Aviwem Tila. Now, parts of the Western Cape awoke to heavy rain and strong winds. It follows last week's floods that killed at least 2 people and mass infrastructure damage across the province. Our Gareth Edwards spoke to Colin Dana from the Western Cape Disaster Management.
Hello to you, Colin. I appreciate the time. This sounds like a bit of a disaster. When people in Cape Town say the wind is bad, you must know how bad it is. Good morning.
Good morning, Gareth. Yes, we got a weather warning yesterday, what's called a level 5 warning for strong winds. But we've also got warnings for wave heights, so anything from 5 to 8 meter wave heights. And then we have a level 4 rain warning. So this is the 4th cold front that we've had, which started on Thursday. So yes, we're really taking a bit of a beating.
Yeah, I'm sure you are as well. But despite the beating you're taking, you're still out there doing what needs to be done, keeping people safe. What is the situation this morning? I know 2 deaths in the past few days. Low-lying areas are a problem. What are you doing at the moment, and what sort of help do you need?
Yeah, so what we did was the worst for us areas that were hit on the first couple of days were the West Coast and the Cape Winelands area. And then down to the Overberg. So we had trouble in Overstrand, the Hermanus to Gansbaai area, where 4 Eskom pylons went down. They had to be repaired. That took about 2 days, but I must say excellent work going up the mountains to replace those pylons. We had a substation in Somerset West that was flooded. But then our biggest challenge was a whole number of towns that were cut off sort of on the West Coast in the Cedarburg, Matsikama area, towns like Citrusdal. We had to do temporary evacuations in Klaver and in Vredendal, and then also area like Wuppertal was cut off. So we started a big operation on Saturday to reach those towns. So there were 2 parallel operations. On the one side, we were working with Gift of the Givers and SASA to reach those towns with 4-wheel drives and with helicopters. We couldn't do it on Saturday because of the weather, but we were able to reach Wuppertal yesterday and deliver about 8 tons of resources to the public there. And then also we were able to reach Citrusdal on Saturday with 4-wheel drive vehicles and with trucks, and we were able to provide food. So it's really a humanitarian operation, but also trying to keep things clear.
As the Western Cape battles yet another cold front and severe weather warnings, some areas have been cut off by heavy rains and wind. ENCA's Nobesuthu Hejana headed to some of the affected areas.
Nobesuthu, I see there behind you, aid is still continuing for those who were left destitute by the floods. Just give us an update, first of all, Nobesuthu, in terms of the number of deaths. Is it still at 2?
Well, Masejo, at this stage, we are still aware of those 2 deaths that have been reported. Also, officials here in the Breda Valley municipality saying that no deaths were recorded for animals as well as humans. But where we are in that particular community that has been hard hit by those flooding, it's an area where a lot of people that are staying there are seasonal farmers. So you can imagine that these people, most of the time throughout the year, are unemployed, and it's an informal settlement called Spooky Town. And behind me, as you've been mentioning, that those donations or donated items are still being handed over to the people that are currently being housed in this hall. Behind me, it's about 1,200 people who have been displaced. Over 300 structures have been severely damaged by the heavy rains since Wednesday. A lot of people here have not been able to move around, hence organizations like the Gift of the Givers, as well as some support from local authorities and provincial authorities have been lending a helping hand.
Later in the day, ENCA anchor Masejo Rahlaga spoke to Wandile Sihlobo, the chief economist at the Agricultural Business Chamber of South Africa, about how our transport infrastructure is impacting growth. A recent survey by Statistics South Africa shows that around 90% of all agricultural products are transported by road.
Wandile, thank you so much for your time here on ENCA. Can you tell us, on average, how much is South Africa losing monthly, in terms of the agriculture sector, to be able to transport goods to either our country or other parts of the world without proper transport or infrastructure assisting?
Masejo, I would say, for me, the point is slightly a bit more nuanced, in a sense that there is a deterioration of our roads and a lack of maintenance. And of course, this has become worse over the past 2 or 3 years with heavy rainfalls that have also added onto that. But as per the competitiveness of our sector in the global market, as we speak today, we're still reasonably competitive. We export about half of what we produce in value terms to the world. But the challenge that comes about is to say, if then the roads are not maintained in the current state that they are in, or even improved, then we run a risk of the competitiveness issue the line. To the number that you're asking to say how much is the sector losing, what we're seeing happening a lot today is that the agribusinesses and some certain farmers, instead of using their capital to actually reinvest in the business and expand their operation, they find themselves having to use millions of rands on maintaining the road and even constructing some that are linking into their sector, while the municipalities should actually be doing that job. So the issue now is that the money that could have been reinvested in growing the sector is going elsewhere into the infrastructure, and that's a problem. And of course, down the line, if this is not resolved, it will become a big challenge.
Do stay tuned to The Day That Was. More top stories and interviews right after the break. Thank you for joining us once more on The Day That Was. I am Aviwem Mtila. It's been over 4 years since victims of heavy floods in Mamelodi were displaced. Some residents there have been relocated, but budget constraints have caused numerous delays. An ad hoc joint committee on flood disaster relief visited residents today. ENCA's Moloko Moloto was there.
Let's quickly talk about the timelines. We have seen mothers who are staying with children in this particular hall, and it's cold. When are you likely to finish this process of relocating them?
We are in a process currently to be able to get to appoint the service provider. We'll start with the clearance of the site. The intention is that at least in the mid-July we'll have that service provider to clear the site. It's going to be a huge work in terms of the clearance. Our intention is to be able to clear the site, pack it, and at least by mid-November we'll commence with the actual relocation.
In the Eastern Cape, farmers say their growth is being stifled as they continue to struggle to get their produce to market. ENCA's Ronald Masinda was on the ground covering the story from East London.
Residents in the Eastern Cape say crippling road infrastructure poses a serious threat to their livelihoods, and it seems authorities are not heeding their calls to fix roads.
We have a road whereby it has never been fixed for the past 12 years. The last councillor was the one who fixed this road, and as you can see, there are potholes everywhere you go. What is aching is that the children will walk on the pavement, and when the cars come, they will move from the road towards where the children and people are walking.
You're just dodging holes all day, every day, and it's becoming a nuisance and also a danger to the pedestrians, even the motorists. You continually have to swerve out the way or drive on people's lawns and that just to prevent hitting or damaging your vehicle.
The unpredictable weather patterns in the province in recent months has also badly affected the roads. A member of the Kunubi CPF says farmers are also struggling.
The farmers are a bit upset because they've got to get from A to B, and the roads are quite bad as well for the trucks even to get from the different sections of the road. So all over we experiencing potholes. Everybody, I've got people, I've got some other groups also, and they're saying the potholes are so bad and they don't know what to do and they need the potholes.
Look at a rainy day. So you've got a stormy day and your pothole is filled with water. You're not going to see the pothole. So obviously it's going to affect the family, the safety of your family in a vehicle. So you don't actually see these holes in the road. So what do? You go over it, you hit to the left, you hit into a wall, someone gets hurt.
The Eastern Cape Transport Department says it has embarked on various projects to improve the state of the province's roads.
You can see driving around the Eastern Cape that a lot is being done, and of course we are calling on those businesses to come on board as well and work with us to try and improve the road infrastructure. The reality is that the will is there, but unfortunately we have a serious problem when it comes to the availability of funds. So we'll welcome any partnership that we can get to improve the road infrastructure.
transport authorities say that some of the good work on the roads should not go unnoticed. At the same time, communities in the province say progress to repair key infrastructure is often slow or completely ignored. Ronald Masinda, East London.
Now to this story. President Cyril Ramaphosa and other African leaders were in Russia for their second leg of their peace mission. Now, while covering the story, I was one of the several South African journalists on the plane that was impounded for at least 26 hours in Poland en route to their peace mission to Russia and Ukraine.
Joe Komani, I'm going to start with you. You've done a lot of international travel. You're a very experienced cameraman. Have you ever experienced anything like this before?
Never before. You know, like after flying over 10 hours, you were expecting to get off as soon as you can. The next thing, like we were there, then say like, okay, it was some mind games actually. Like you were thinking of disembarking the
What
aircraft.
did they tell you? What was the first thing they said to you when you realized something was going wrong?
No, basically when it landed, and then there was some kind of a meeting like in front of the aircraft. We didn't know what was going on initially. But now the word came that we can't disembark. So there were some talks, and then suddenly we realized that it's not going to happen. And then they also said, no, actually, we're going to sleep in this aircraft.
So what went wrong?
Sally, it's two sides to the coin. If you are to ask the South African delegation, as Joe suggests, that it's only around midnight where we got the true essence of what was going on, having landed at around 1:30 on the Thursday. So all this time, I think that's the most frustrating part of it all, is not knowing what's going on. There was dribs and drabs of communication, and then not being told the full extent, up until General Wale Rode, of course, heading the Presidential Protection Service, eventually decided to call journalists and say, come see for yourself what was happening. That's when we eventually were allowed to film ourselves, and he was very frustrated.
What did you see? So what did you see? What was going wrong?
So we go outside. All of us rush, obviously, to hear what's going to happen. We go outside. General Wale Rode is very upset. He has some of the personnel of the Presidential Protection Service. He has members of the SAA crew. He has members of the embassy. They're up and down the stairs. Down on the ground, you can see the Polish police, and you can see it's tense engagement, Sally, on what's going on. And just on their left, well, our left, there is cargo that you can see is the cargo that essentially is our cargo from the SAA chartered Airbus. The bone of contention is whether this cargo is to be allowed inside, because we do understand it's carrying the weapons of the 120 or so personnel of the Presidential Protection Service. The issue is their permits. Do they have the correct authorization? And with that, we've come to the end of yet another edition of The Day That Was. From myself and the superb team at ENCA, have a great evening.